The code of the forgotten, it was the fluorescent lights of the boardroom that first burned my skin. Not because they were hot, though they were, but because the weight of them pressed down like a vice. My colleagues stood in a semicircle, their faces slick with forced courtesy, their smiles thin as razor blades. I'd just been told in unmistakably polite terms that my work on quantum encryption was too niche, too risky, too unrealistic to pursue. The man who'd once called me a visionary now nodded at the door as though dismissing me. Best walk, will keep you updated. I didn't leave the building for 3 years. They were right, I suppose. At least they were right about the job I lost. But not about the dream. Not that it mattered. Dreams are things you keep alive in the dark, aren't they? Even when the world tells you to put them down. I'd started with plants. Not because they were safe or practical, but because they were alive. I'd spent nights in abandoned labs, coding algorithms inspired by the rhythmic pulses of fern fronds, the fractal patterns of ivy. My first breakthrough came when I realized what no one else had. That biosignals, those tiny electrical whispers plants use to communicate, could be translated into encryption keys. The idea was laughed at everywhere I went. Pseudoscience, they called it. Aesthetic fluff, one investor muttered. "You're chasing ghosts," my sister said, her voice a blade wrapped in silk. "I'm planting forests," I told myself, forests of code. The work was slow. I'd retreat to a cabin in the Cascades where the Wi-Fi was weak but the silence was profound. I'd sit by the fire, staring at a weathered notebook filled with sketches of roots and binary. Every failed simulation, every dead end made me doubt myself. But doubt was the fuel. I didn't want to prove them wrong, I wanted to show them what they'd missed. The fragile brilliance of a system that didn't fight tradition but danced with it. Years blurred. Then, a call came. Dr. Vera, a voice, warm and unfamiliar, crackled through the phone. It was her brother, Elias. We'd been estranged since the funeral of our father, a nuclear engineer who'd once told me, "Never waste your talent on nonsense." I'd hung up on him then. "It's me," I said, throat tight. "I've built something. It's real." He didn't ask for details. Later I'd understand. Elias had always been cautious, too cautious, but tonight he listened. I flew back the next day. My home, a weathered Victorian on the outskirts of Portland, waited like a relic. My mother's roses still clung to the ironwork. My father's old telescope sat in the attic, collecting dust. The house smelled like cedar and decades of regret. They opened the door like it was a sacrament. My cousin, Mara, who'd scoffed at my digitally meaningless pursuits, blinked at me. "You're shorter," she said, eyeing my stocky frame. I made a joke. It didn't land. She left without a word. Later, my mother, still in her Sunday best, ushered me into the dining room. "You've gone off the rails," she said softly, her hands clasped tight. "All that animism, it's not real work." I didn't answer, not yet, but then I did. Without preamble, I projected a holographic map of the Willamette Valley. The night sky overlapped with a digital forest, each tree a node in my network. Leaves shimmered with encrypted data, roots pulsed like veins. Birdsong transformed into binary symphonies. It wasn't a screen. It was alive. My mother leaned back, her mouth a straight line. Elias peered over her shoulder, his brow knitting. "This is gardening," he said, wary. "It's crypto gardening," I said, grinning, "where cryptography grows in soil." They stared, not with ridicule but something quieter, curiosity maybe, or dismay. Elias shook his head. "How did you even?" "By listening," I said, "to things no one lets you hear." The next morning we toured the field. My barren land, now the Sierra Crypto-Botanical Preserve, stretched beneath us. A mosaic of saguaro cacti, black walnut groves, and bioluminescent moss gardens. Every plant was a cryptographic node. Every breeze, a data stream. A drone hovered overhead, harvesting metabolic pulses to map underground water reserves. A child from a nearby town waded through a polluted stream, its algae now glowing softly with embedded encryption codes, purifying toxins as it spread. "You did it," Elias whispered. "Revolutionized cybersecurity," I corrected. "Made networks resilient. Adaptive, alive, Mara brought it up later over lukewarm pizza. You turned your dad's land into a weird oasis. What even is this? I let her stare. Let her squint at the tablets we'd installed in the oak trees, logging temperature and seismic data. It's a network of mutual aid, I said. The plants communicate. The fungi network the roots. Even the coyotes help guard the perimeter, she frowned. Sounds like New Age BS. Is it? I asked. Or is it just uncharted? By dusk, Elias had a device in his hand. A small pineapple-shaped key he'd borrowed without asking. Inside a message, network oriente, decryption, touch the bark. Intimacy, listen. He called it brilliant the first time it worked. But the real reckoning came at the gala. It was on a billboard, of course. Dr. Ilara Vera, quantum to quantum plus biosignal cryptography pioneer. Reshaping digital security through natural ecosystems. My family squatted on the grass, cotton shirts, swapped for rented tuxedos. They scanned their phones for check-ins, for likes, for the thrill of validation. Then the awards began. A UN panel named me Innovator of the Decade. A Nature journal published my manifesto, Cryptography as Symbiosis. And overnight, the world's governments started cracking my encryption layers through the plants. A hacker in Nairobi bypassed a Russian firewall by planting kudzu in the city's data farms. A startup in Tokyo built a biocrypt app that improved sleep and secured Wi-Fi routers. They found me crying in the lab, hugging a server farm that smelled of pine and electricity. Elias squeezed my shoulder. You were right, he said. You did plant a forest. I didn't know how to answer. The invitation came a week later. There's a job for you, Elias said, handing me a USB drive at dawn. Embedded in it was a job offer, Director of Global Biocryptonics at the UN. I laughed. Too big, I lied. You're not alone anymore, he said. They stood in the field again, older. My mother wept openly as I showed them the new saplings, a hedge now humming with quantum-resistant algorithms. Mara snapped a selfie with a hummingbird perched on a cryptographic leaf. Elias stayed silent, handing me a seed.